see everyone here tonight. We once again have a good number. And so we appreciate everyone coming back out to worship. It truly is, guys, it's a privilege for us to be able to come together to worship God. And we need to treat it like that. It's not something that we should take lightly. Because I tell you, there may come a day that you're not able to get out. And if you don't think it's important, you go talk to some of our shut-in. You go talk to someone that are not able to get out, and they would give anything if they could be here. Okay? So never take it for granted. Okay? Use every opportunity you have that you are given by God to worship Him. Okay? To be with God's people. It's important. It's important. And I'm so thankful for your presence tonight. Tonight we're going to talk about something that it's not a subject that I would say is right up there as something I really like to talk about or when I want to talk about, but it's something I think we need to talk about. It's something that it's out in the world, it's everywhere out in the world, and it's something that for the most part the world thinks it's okay. It's okay. And so I guess I'll just let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to talk about Powerball tonight, okay? Lance is over. All right, so Powerball, it's everywhere, isn't it? Okay, and I'm not just picking on Powerball. Okay, we see that. I'm one of these guys now that I have to stay up to watch the weather. Now, I used to laugh at my parents for doing that. But now I stay up to watch the weather, and so before the news comes on, guess what? Good old Powerball, right? And you got to go through all the things, and it's everywhere. But this idea of legalized gambling, okay, American Gaming Association. Listen to some of the things, and I've got more statistics and more things, and we're not going to be able to go through all of them, okay? But I'm going to give you just a few things. 82% of Americans, from one survey, favor some sort of legalized gambling. 66% think that online gambling is a positive contribution or contributor to the economy. Just to kind of give you some of that, also 59% support marijuana for medical and recreational use, and 39% support prostitution. So you kind of get an idea where there's a lot of craziness out there. This is a huge industry. Okay, and I don't know if you can see this here, but this was just sports betting and lottery put together. The estimated market size, and I say estimated, that says they're $210 billion. Okay, now I've got other statistics that kind of varies. Okay, this is the legalized. Okay, legalized, I've got $240 billion industry. In 2021, okay, Americans spent $105.26 billion just on lottery tickets, making it the most popular form of gaming. That's more than the total spending on music, books, sports teams, movies, and video games combined. Just think about that. Now, as this writer said, the elephant in the room is the fact that people with a household income of less than $10,000 a year who play the lottery spend $597 a year on tickets. People that make less than $10,000 a year. This is according to the New York Times. Sports betting has been legalized now in the last few years, and if you'll notice now, all of the sports, that's all about that now, isn't it? Okay, and you hear things like DraftKings, FanDuel, okay, all things. So it's not just the lottery and other things, it's the sports betting that is really growing, okay, and really taking hold. Many things. history of gambling. This is not a new thing, okay? And so I don't want you to think that this is something that America just came up with, okay? It's been around for a while, different types of gambling and things. In fact, some of the things I looked at, it's amazing. Homer, in 850 BC, wrote about the knuckle bones of sheep and cattle marked on four sides and rolled like dice. Okay, gaming boards were discovered on the island of Crete as early as 1800 BC. Racetracks existed in ancient Rome. Remember, we all know in Matthew 27, you remember when Jesus, lots were cast for his garments. Okay, that was a game of chance, okay, there to see who was going to get, okay, his garment. This was one interesting thing I found. It said gambling was often referred to the first and second century writers. They pointed out, though, listen, that such was not the practice of those who followed Christ. Tertullian in 200 AD, he said, if you say that you are a Christian, when you are a dice player, you say what you are not, because you are a partaker of the world. Well, that was interesting there. But anyway, so you see there, just look at this, that, gaming, gambling, those type of things, okay, have been around for a long time, okay? Been around for a long time. You think about the history of the lottery. Okay, the lottery is an interesting thing. When you go back and look at that, it actually can date back in the 1600s. Okay, the 1600s. And many saw, it was in the English colonies then, many saw gaming or gambling as a vice or form of laziness. Okay? The financiers of Jamestown, Virginia used lotteries to support their colony. Okay? It wasn't long then after that each of the original 13 colonies established a lottery to raise their revenue. Guess what their claim was? Same thing we claim today, okay, a lot of things. Schools. Okay, we do it for the schools, the roads, the bridges, other public necessities. Okay? The mid-late 1800s, though, it faced a problem, almost faced extinction. It was banned in every state but Delaware and Louisiana for moral and religious reasons. So when they banned it, then it says that there was a rise in the underground lotto games, okay, and scams and operations. So anyway, 1930s, it started making a comeback, 1970s, 1980s. You fast forward to today, okay, there are 44 states who offer the Mega Millions and Powerball games, and even more states who offer various lottery games and different things. So it's just about in every state, okay? It's just about everywhere. One of the things that's interesting about it, when you think about the state lotteries, they're considered recession-proof. Not too many industries are considered recession-proof. What that means is when times get hard, people, they want to keep going after. They still have that idea of get rich quick, let's hit it, do that. They keep doing that. Okay, states know this. They do that for a reason. That way they know they're going to continue to get revenue. In fact, a lot of times when there's an economic downturn, guess what? That actually goes up because people are trying even harder trying to hit it rich. So that begs the question then, what's wrong with it? Is there anything wrong with the lottery? Someone says, well, you know what? I don't think there's a passage in the Bible that says, thou shalt not play blackjack, or or thou shalt not. I don't see a problem with it. What's the problem? Well, let's talk about the definition then of gambling or gambling. And part of the problem is why some people don't see anything wrong is because they don't understand the definition. Okay, they have a poor definition of it. Some poorly define gambling as simply taking a risk. So say, you're just taking a risk. That's not well, no, that's not what gambling is. It's not just taking a risk. We take a risk in a lot of different areas, right? In fact, in the Bible, some were condemned for not taking risk, okay, if you remember. Okay, you take a risk when you get in your car. Everybody took a risk to come here tonight, okay? Right? You get in your car and you drive. You're taking a risk. That's not what gambling is, okay? So we need to properly define gambling. Gambling properly defined, is wagering something of value. It could be money, it could be property, it could be whatever, something of value on the chance outcome of an event. You've got an event that's just, right, win or lose, head or tails, whatever. A chance outcome of an event wherein there is a winner and a loser. So you see the three elements there. There's a wagering of something, a wagering of something on a chance outcome event, and then there is a winner and there's a loser. Another very similar definition I found says to stake something of value or wager money on a game of chance or uncertain event for the intended purpose of winning at another's expense. Okay? Your winning is based upon someone else losing. Okay? So keep that in mind. That's what we're talking about when you talk about gambling, and that's what we're talking about there. There are many, that's another, social dangers when it comes that are associated with gambling. It's not just the fact, they're not the only thing about or it surrounds gambling is the money. What do they call, what's that, Las Vegas? Anybody ever heard of that? Yeah. What do they call that? Sin City? There's a reason why they call it that. That's not gambling is not the only thing going on there. The old saying, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas and all that. The adult, gaming, the adult entertainment, all of these things. You see all the things that go along with it. There are many, many other things. But there are a lot of problems associated with gambling. Families where one parent gambles compulsively are more likely to experience, guess what? Domestic violence, child abuse. 1/2 of compulsive gamblers commit crimes. Why are they doing that? Because they're in debt. They get desperate. They get to the point they feel like they got to do something. They've got to do something wrong, something else wrong. Over 80% of problem gamblers were at risk for alcohol or drug use dependency. More than 60% of people reported wanting help, but only 25% sought assistance. And it's a problem by all ages as well. It's not just for older people or middle-aged people, even the young people. And think about the influence. Think about, people are spending their money. They're going to you go to a gas station, right? People are spending their money, and what's happening? Man goes in there, he gets his check, and he goes in there, and he buys things, and he goes out to the car. The kids are out in the car, and they're all out there, and they're scratching away. Most of the people that do this are people that they're the lower income people. And they're struggling already. And they're taking food out of their children's mouths just to satisfy to try to get this get rich quick thing. So many problems, so many things. And I was, many things I'd looked at, and it just makes you sick to think about it. The gaming and depression, gambling and suicide. Many studies on this. It said that those on compulsive gambling, the gambling suicide link found that approximately half of respondents in compulsive gambling were also found to experience suicidal ideation. Substance abuse, we've already talked about that, but there's so many things. I mean, it just tears your heart out to think about all of the problems that are associated with this. So we've got to ask the question then, well, what is wrong with gambling? What is wrong with this idea? Someone says, well, I can't find a verse that tells me in the Bible not to do that. But there may not be a verse that says, thou shalt not, partake in blackjack or whatever, But there's a lot of Bible principles, that we need to think about. And one of them is found One of them is found in the Ten Commandments, as we've talked about, and I'm sure we're going to hit on later on. But gambling often appeals to greed and covetousness. Covetousness. Turn your Bibles to Romans chapter 13. Romans chapter 13. In verse 8 it says, "Owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. For he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. For this, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet. And if there is any other commandment, it is summed up in this saying, you shall love your neighbor as yourself." This idea of greed and covetousness, desiring, lusting after what someone else has. And think about it, that's exactly what gambling is. You're wanting to win what someone else has. You're wanting to take what someone else has. Colossians chapter 3 and verse 5. It says, "Therefore, consider the members of your earthly body as dead to immorality, to impurity, to passion, evil desire, and greed, which amounts to idolatry." You make it your God, right? You're making that. "For it is because of these things that the wrath of God will come upon the sons of disobedience." So the first Bible principle there, gambling appeals to greed and covetousness. And we've already read, Camden read for us tonight, 1 Timothy 6, 9 and 10. Right? The love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Many have gotten into big problems because of that. They have been snared. Their faith has been shipwrecked, as we've talked in the past about, because of that. Gambling is selfish. Gamblers win at the direct economic loss of others. Someone said that it violates the principle of love. And you think about that, it does, doesn't it? Well, we talk about passages like Matthew chapter 7 and verse 12, and we call this the golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. Well, you can kind of throw that out the window when it comes to gambling. Romans chapter 13 in verse 10. It says, "Love does no wrong to a neighbor. Therefore, love is the fulfillment of the law." Love does no wrong to a neighbor. I want you to think about that. Think about that. Gambling is selfish. It wins the direct economic loss of others. Gambling is also contrary to honest work and responsible stewardship. Ephesians chapter 4 in verse 28. It says, "He who steals must steal no longer, but rather he must labor, performing with his own hands what is good, so that he will have something to share with one who has need." You think about 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 1 and 2, talking about being a trustworthy steward. Okay? A good, trustworthy steward of our money. Think about that. Think about that. But gambling also is stealing by mutual consent. I want you to think about this. Gambling bears the same relationship to stealing that dueling does to murder. Now we don't talk about duels anymore, but used to. Okay, and we even had some presidents that were involved. Okay, in our past in dueling. But think about that. Gambling bears the same relationship to stealing that dueling does to murder. In Proverbs chapter 28, in verse 6, "Better is the poor who walks in his integrity than he who is crooked, though he be rich. Think about the principle there. Okay, the idea of getting something by fraud or deceit or trickery, okay, or those things. And the idea of winning something based on someone else losing something, okay? This is not the way God intends for us to live our lives. Another reason that gambling is wrong is because it's highly addictive. Highly addictive. It's amazing. I was reading one of the things, and I don't know if they're in every state, but I know in Texas they were talking about on the lottery ticket that they have on the back side of it, there was a number to call. And it was a number if you had a problem. Okay, it says if you were addicted to this, you just call this number and you can get help on the back of the lottery ticket. Okay, I don't know, maybe in the back of all of them, I don't know, but they realize, okay, they know that it's addictive. They know it can be a problem for people, okay? And so it's something that we really need to think about. When you think about passages like 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 19, Peter talks about being enslaved by what overcomes us. Okay, and so when you lose self-control over something, and it could be anything, right? But in this case, people lose control, and what happens? Think about it. If someone has something, they're gambling, right, and they lose something, what do they think? Oh, well, I got to keep playing so I can win it back. But yet, when they win something, what do they say? Well, I can win more. Okay, so I've got more now to play with. Okay, and so I was talking to a guy at work a few weeks ago, and he was talking about going down to one of the casinos, him and his wife on the weekend. I mean, he's talking about hundreds and hundreds of dollars that he had lost in the past. And he says, yeah, well, one weekend, man, I hit it good. One weekend. But then all these other times he talks about, yeah, it's been rough for me the last little while, because and so it's just it's a thing with him. He's just, and he realizes it's wrong. We talked about it a little bit, and he was, I don't need to be doing that. I need to stay away from that. I need to stay away from it. But yet he was going that weekend. He was headed right back down there. It's something we've got to be very careful with. In 1 Corinthians chapter 6, notice what Paul says in verse 12. He says, all things are lawful for me, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful for me, but I will not be mastered by anything. And you look at different translations of that, okay? And sometimes when he says, I will not let something take control of me. Okay, I will not have these bad habits or these things that can take. And so we've got to be careful we're not enslaved to this addiction. Self-control, something to think about. And then also, gambling is associated with worldliness. Remember the quote that we had. Remember, I think it was from the 2nd century. Okay, and he said that, if you say that you're a Christian. Okay, you say you're a Christian, but yet you're rolling the dice. Okay, then he goes, you say what you're not. See, it's associated, all the vices that are associated, right, with gambling and other things, and all the other problems and things we've talked about in the past. Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12, I think I have the right one there. Verse 7 says, never pay back evil for evil to anyone. Respect what is right in the sight of all men. You think about that. We're to respect what is right. So what does that imply? We need to stay away from that which is not right. Okay? We think about our influence. You want to have an influence as a Christian. What kind of influence you're going to have? Okay, you're standing in line with everybody else, right, to get your lottery ticket. You think you're going to turn around and talk to the person behind you about Jesus? You think you're going to be able to do that? You think what kind of influence you're going to have while you're getting your lottery tickets or you're doing your things? it's not going to happen. Philippians chapter 2. Philippians chapter 2 and verse 15. It says, so that you will prove yourselves to be blameless and innocent, children of God above reproach in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you appear as lights in the world, holding fast the word of life, so that in the day of Christ I will have reason to glory, because I did not run in vain, nor toil in vain. Notice it says, among whom you appear as lights in the world. That's what we're to be. We're to be light and we're to be salt. Christians, we need to stay away, okay, from the very appearance of evil. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 21. And so we need to be careful. And we need to make sure that we're not consenting to or voting for sin. Okay, in any way. And I know we've already got this lottery in our state and all things, but if there's ever comes a time where there's something that you need to make sure you stand up against it. In Psalm chapter 50, verses 16 through 18, it says, but to the wicked God says, what right have you to declare my statutes, or take my covenant in your mouth, seeing that you have instruction, and cast my words behind you? When you saw a thief, you consented with him, and have been a partaker with adulterers. We need to make sure that we're not consenting. So, well, I don't take part in it, but every once somebody gives me one, I'll just take that, write it that, and I'll do this. Romans 1 and verse 32. Paul said, who knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. Notice that covetousness was in that list. Okay, we didn't read that. If you go up a couple of verses, covetousness, inventors of evil things are in the list of sins that are mentioned here. You see, Satan is peddling a lie when it comes to gambling. When it comes to all of these things, he's trying to tell us, well, it's for the good. We can spend it on education. You can benefit the poor. Okay, they actually say that, and yet they're the main ones that are participating in it. According to a statistics from Georgia State University, those who make less than $25,000 a year are more likely to play the lottery than those who make more than $75,000 a year. Now, why would you say that? You would say because the ones that make less than $25,000, they don't have the extra money, and yet they're the ones that are just throwing it away. It just burns me up to think about it. I heard one time, the definition of a lottery is? It's a tax on the poor. It's a tax on those that don't understand statistics. You think about that. Now, on the very first slide, I don't know if you saw it or not, I had the Powerball numbers there. 1 in 292 million. That's your odds of winning it. You're more likely 250 times more likely to be struck by lightning than win that. Okay, if you went to your investor, he said, man, I got something for you. He goes, I need you to invest in it. This is it. Okay, the chances of hitting, okay, you could hit big on this investment. It's just 1 in 292 million. You want to do it? Would we all be going, yes, man, that's it. This is it. This is going to hit. This is it. We'd all be like, what are you talking about? No way. Get out of my face. I'm going somewhere else, right? Somebody else is going to be investing my money. And yet, look. Okay? Think about how many billions of dollars people are throwing away. Just tears me up. The dangers of gambling. There's an old proverb. It says, in a bet, there's a fool and a thief. Think about that. Someone says, you know what? I just do it for recreation and fun. You ever heard of something else? You know what? I'm just going to do it for fun. I'm going to do it for recreation. Well, you know what? Proverbs 10:23, I think, answers that for us. Doing wickedness is like sport to a fool, and so is wisdom to a person of understanding. Now, you think about that. We're not going to read it tonight, but you also write down Jeremiah chapter 17 and verse 11. And you look at that passage. Look at that passage, if you will. Brethren, we need to make sure that we are children of light. We need to make sure that we are doing what God has authorized for us to do, and we stay away from the things that are associated with this world. We must do that. If we're going to continue to be light and salt, we've got to show a distinction. We've got to show when something's wrong, we've got to stay away from it. We can't see how close we can get to it and then still expect to be a good influence. Doing wickedness is like sport to a fool. I thank you for your attention tonight. We're about to sing the song, Who Will Follow Jesus? And that's the question of the ages, isn't it? Who will follow Jesus? Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through Him. Will you come to Jesus? Will you come to Him tonight? If we can help you in any way in becoming obedient to Jesus Christ, we urge you and beg you to come.